idea through this campaign of putting them both together is, number one, to raise enough money for both organizations to make it through an entire year without having to sweat.
Dov Koodin is with us. He is the project manager of the Toronto Eruv. He arrived earlier from Ottawa, correct? And is joining us here this morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
I have two things that I have to address before we talk about the Eruv.
Go right ahead.
Hi, Mom. She's listening in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg!
And I want to give a shout-out to a guy named Rabbi Micha Shotkin, who does Eruv work up and down the Eastern Seaboard. And we worked together on his first two Eruvs, and he's a delight. Anyway, now we can talk about the Eruv.
How long have you been involved with the Toronto Eruv?
Since the 90s, about 25 years now.
And what could you tell us that people don't realize?
The Eruv cost a lot of money. People think it's a piece of string, and it's not. My job is to go under bridges and check markers under the bridge, to go into aqueducts and check the markers in the aqueducts, to inspect the fencing along the railway tracks. We do not walk on the railway tracks without protection, by the way. I don't recommend doing that. I brought one of our tools, actually, that we check the lechis, which are considered the side of a door, using laser technology. This little device is a $500 device that will tell us exactly what's above it, and we use it to check the alignment of poles. Something interesting that what you mentioned that I do the project manager. Somebody asked my son Shlomo, mentioned that your father keeps the Eruv kosher. I do the quality control, basically, and that I keep the Eruv kosher, and my son corrected him and said, no, my father puzzles the Eruv in Toronto. Mr. Canada, the repairman, makes it kosher. So the aspect of an Eruv is kosher until I find a problem.
How large is the Toronto Eruv?
It goes from Highway 407 down to St. Clair. It goes from the railway tracks that are near, pardon me, Bayview and Leslie to the railway tracks that are just past Dufferin. It's a huge area.
Could you estimate how many square kilometers or miles that is?
I can't. But
it's a big
huge.
one.
Yeah, it's a very big one. It takes about a month to do a complete audit.
Wow.
It's very big, and these are ongoing, and it's...
Is it even possible or necessary to check it on a weekly basis, or only certain areas of it are really vulnerable?
No area really is completely audited on a weekly basis. It's the same as milk. It relies on a chazaka.
Right.
In the same way that Chalav Yisrael milk wouldn't be kosher until you check the lungs of the animal that you got the milk from. An Eruv relies on a chazaka and is kosher until there's a problem. And when we find a problem, we've got repair guys that do wonderful work that go out into... They have to walk 45 minutes through the brush to get to a hydro tower that needs a string repaired. It's ongoing work that involves a great deal of people.
Tell me about the cooperation necessary with all these government agencies and those responsible for the highways and fencing and railways, etc. It must be just that alone must be a mammoth task to be in touch with everybody and do everything properly.
It's wonderful to have good relations with the parties involved. The Eruv, I have a relationship with 3 railways, CN Rail, CP Rail, and Metrolinx, and they're also their subsidiary, PNR, who does the work on the ground for them. And they're very kind, and they allow us to inspect the fences along the railway tracks and to go under bridges, and they've been very helpful. The Ministry of Transportation has been incredibly helpful. They've asked us to do some special work for them that's going to cost $50,000.
Wow.
We have to install telephone poles and messenger wire, the steel cables between them, to accommodate certain freeway ramps. And that's one of the projects that the funding is going for. And it's necessary. A lot of people think that it's the expense, piece of string. And no, we have to bring in work crews to install telephone poles.
Wow, that's just one example. I'm sure there are other major projects as well. Dov Koodin is with us. He is the project manager here for the Toronto Eruv. I want to remind everybody that a significant percentage of today's charity campaign goes to the Toronto Community Eruv to keep it going. Don't take it for granted. Make sure to support both of the essential services that we are supporting today, both Hatzoloh of Toronto and the Toronto Community Eruv. What's the most vulnerable part of the Eruv, and I assume it's weather related, right? There's probably one part that you're most concerned about each week, and especially when there's a snow and ice storm.
The ice storm is the biggest threat to the Eruv.
Right.
Freezing rain weighs down everything. And there was one freezing rainstorm about 2 years ago that we had 79 work orders that came in at the beginning of the week. And our repair guys went to work and they repaired all 79 before Shabbos. Our repair guys take Shabbos very seriously, and they don't want the Eruv to have to be down because it's a lot of people take the Eruv for granted, and that's not good. They should check every week.
How often is it down?
The Eruv is up. It hasn't been down for years.
Wow, even with all the weather up here and all that.
Yeah, but they should check. It puts an incredible pressure on the guys in the field when they know that there are people who are not going to check and carry, and they want that Eruv up, and they go to great lengths. Yeah.
Amazing. And I said earlier that you must make fun of the Miami Eruv checkers, but they also have their weather concerns with hurricanes and everything else down there.
It's interesting because the posek here, Rabbi Steinmetz, who's the posek for the Eruv, has been working with Miami on their Eruv. They're having problems with the sea levels changing.
Right.
And I don't understand all of the details.
Right, but things shift.
Yeah. Ground shifts. We have certain
Right.
hills that we use, and we have to look for erosion. We have to ongoing. An Eruv is a living, breathing thing that needs to be maintained regularly, and doesn't. You don't put it in place and leave it and say it's done.
Is it a 6-day-a-week operation?
Yes, busier at the end of the week for
Right.
the repair guys, and I work in the beginning of the week to look for the problems.
Unbelievable, I'll tell you. How's this week going so far? It's now Wednesday, so give us a perspective on what's happened over the last 48 hours.
I'll tell you one work order that was discovered. There's a Liquor Commission Board store on DuPont, and there's a brick wall that goes along their area. Well, there's buildup of leaves and branches that have built up, and we require a certain height for a wall to be. And it hasn't met the criteria for the distance. Now, by some opinions, it would be kosher, but we have standards that are higher than just any opinion, and we will go in there and excavate and do what's necessary to make that wall kosher. So that's just one example of the work that has to be done.
And it sounds like that would involve just clearing the area and
increasing
exposing
the height
more of the wall, right?
Yeah, and
right.
increasing the height of the wall, too.
Until this visit, I never had an appreciation for how hard it is to maintain an Eruv. I'm telling you, I was also one of those people who thought on Friday at 2 p.m. someone runs around and for 20 minutes, checks the entire thing. It's not like that at all.
No, there are staff. There are, I believe, 8 volunteer checkers who check it on Thursday.
Wow.
And there's a Rabbi Norman or Manny Deanna that go out and check about 50 particular spots that have to be checked on a weekly basis. And during the week, I do the stuff in between the spots.
So you fully understand why this campaign is important, because you know that the Eruv bank account needs money in it to pay for everything you've described to us this morning.
If somebody uses the Eruv and they consider that what they spend on grape juice for an average Shabbos, and let's say they were to say, I'll spend $5 a week to have an Eruv in the city.
Right.
And if everybody would say $5 a week, what's that going to come to? I'm going to send a check to the Eruv for that amount. If you haven't given this year, then give for the last year. Don't say, I'll start now. We need the money to pay for operations that have been ongoing, and the Eruv needs to operate. Without it, the community won't be the same.
Dov Koodin, he is the project manager of the Toronto Eruv, and he encourages everyone, as do we, to support the charity campaign today, because the Eruv, of course, is one of the beneficiaries. Go to charity.com/Toronto. Anything you'd like to add that I didn't cover?
You're doing a good job. I
Thank you.
appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we appreciate, now more than ever, all the work you do. Dov Koodin is back, project manager for the Toronto Eruv. The campaign's doing well so far, thank God.
That's fantastic.
Baruch Hashem.
I've got some.
Do we have an update? Do we have a financial update in terms of a number, a grand total that we're up to right now, or we don't have that yet? We're going to check on that? All right, Dov, you said you have a great story for us. Go ahead.
I do, about a man who really gave his life to the Eruv. But first I want to talk about the funding.
Okay.
The funding of the Eruv has a benefactor that reimburses people for their donations. a lot of people might not know about this, but when you give to the Eruv, it counts as your Shabbos needs. And the same one that commanded us to keep Shabbos is the same one that reimburses us for our Shabbos needs.
That's right. What
And
we spend on Shabbos, we get back.
Exactly. The Eruv counts as your Shabbos needs.
Great point.
And therefore, when you donate to the Eruv, you get the money back.
Right.
That's a reality. That's not just a story. That's really what's going to
happen. It's part of our faith and tradition.
Absolutely.
The story you wanted to tell.
There's a gentleman named Joe Ackman who worked for CN Rail. An incredible story, and I cry when I tell the story. He was approached by Mr. Deanna and Mr. Gordon to ask for help with the Eruv because we were going to use the CN line on each side, the north and west side, the west and east side, for the Eruv. And they went to him and asked him if they could use the fences along the railway tracks. And he said, yes, you can, but most of the fences have fallen into disrepair. And he said, that means that you really don't have anything. He said, there is a city bylaw that says that there is supposed to be a fence between rail lines and urban areas. Why don't we just enforce the bylaw ourselves rather than having somebody enforce it upon us? CN paid for about $500,000 worth of fencing.
Wow.
To make the Eruv possible. And it was Joe Ackman who made it happen. Joe Ackman was asked why he helped so much with the Eruv, and he said before he started it all, his grandfather came to him in a dream and said that he should help with the Eruv. And said that that's your purpose in life.
Wow.
And he asked his grandfather in the dream, what's an Eruv? And he said, 2 men will come and explain it to you. And Mr. Gordon and Mr. Deanna came and said, we need help with the Eruv. And he said, I'm going to help. And it was very interesting because when the Eruv was done, there was going to be a large dinner to celebrate all the people who helped. And they called Joe Ackman to invite him. And just as the Eruv had been finished, he passed away.
Wow. His life mission had been completed, huh?
Yeah, we don't know, but it certainly does look that way.
I'm saying that's the way it seems.
could be that conclusion. So there are people who have helped that we're very grateful to, and that's the story.
I want to thank you, Dov Koodin, project manager here at the Toronto Eruv, and I encourage everybody to continue to give. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.